Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. So as you know, I have been talking about the issue of not really owning what you bought and paid for the last couple of years. This channel started with me running a small repair company, going over right to repair, going over how you can't repair things not just made by Apple, but made by many other companies, from medical devices to tractors. And over the past few years, I've been documenting how you don't really own what you bought and paid for. And as I said, same thing with right to repair. After going to the legislature for 5 to 6 years and getting nothing done, I decided to try to do something about it. We started a nonprofit and we got a few bills passed. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like, but I wanted to try and be a little bit a part of the solution to the problem. And now I'm going to try to do that with this whole issue of digital ownership. One of the problems nowadays is not just the fact that every company is trying to take away your ability to say that you own what you bought and paid for, but many of you may not be aware that there are actually laws in the books that make it illegal to break the digital locks inside of what you bought and paid for, which I think is just anti-ownership and anti-American. The new foundation, called the Fulu Foundation, is the following mission statement, which I'm not reading off a whiteboard. Fulu informs and educates consumers on the erosion of ownership in technology and fights back against it on the legislative, cultural, and legal front. I wanted to introduce my good friend over here, Kevin O'Reilly, who's been helping me out with a lot of this work. And by helping me out a lot with this work, I mean, he does the work, and I've been the public face taking the credit for it this entire time. Yeah, you're right. You and Nathan Proctor have to split it 50-50. In all seriousness, I've said this a lot on Reddit and in many other forums, that there are tons of people that do a lot of great work in this movement, but every single time something happens, even if it's his accomplishment, in the comments I'll see, oh, Louis Rossmann did a great job. It's like, I wasn't even there when this happened, and he was there at the bill signing. So I wanted to introduce him, and I wanted to talk about a new foundation that I'm starting to try and work on these issues a little bit more, so that hopefully in the future we can actually say that we own what we bought and paid for. This means trying to make not just legislative shifts, but also cultural shifts, so that more than the 0.1% of the people that watch this YouTube channel are informed on this and want to push back against it, in addition to also trying to change some of these abusive laws. So with that, well, man of the hour.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Louis. And yeah, don't want to downplay the work that you've done on Right to Repair. I mean, there's a huge reason that when I'm out in the field, when all the different members of the Right to Repair movement have been out in the field and talking to people, and they are nodding, they are talking, I can't tell you the number of times that people are like, oh, that's the thing Louis Rossmann talks about, right? So definitely when it comes to Right to Repair and when it comes to these kind of issues, it takes all kinds, right? There are organizations, there are people on YouTube, there are field organizers, there are all these different groups that have made Right to Repair an issue. And that's really how I came to this work, right? So for a long time, I worked with Nathan Proctor and the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, particularly on the agricultural side of Right to Repair, right? So when I first joined, there had been some interest, but there was a lot of confusion about exactly how farmers were being locked out of their tractors. I wrote a report called Deer in the Headlights that investigated kind of the exact technological mechanisms that John Deere was using to lock farmers out of fixing their own tractors. Went on to do some other research as well on consolidation of dealerships, how that makes the problem worse. Also talked about the general costs that this was bringing farmers. But through that process, right, not only was I doing research, right, when it comes to passing laws and making change, it involves also getting media attention, right? Writing stuff in the Wall Street Journal, getting coverage and everything from local news to major media outlets across the country. There was work, building relationship and working really closely with the National Farmers Union and its state affiliates, right? They were the farmer voice calling for this. And at the end of the day, that's the most important voice. Those are the people who are being affected by this issue. So worked very closely in particular with Dan Waldvogel and the Rocky Mountains Farmers Union to pass the first agricultural right to repair bill in the country in Colorado, which was really exciting, signed back in, I want to say 2023 now. I'm really excited to be taking this and kind of taking the next logical step from right to repair, right? So if you can't fix your stuff, you don't own it, but ownership is about so much more than just fixing, right? It's about being able to transfer what you want. It's about being able to tinker and to adjust and to modify your stuff. It's about being able to say, I don't care how long the manufacturer is supporting this. I want to keep using this device. So I'm going to find a way to make that happen, right? And I think that's what we're trying to do with this new foundation is really restore ownership, whether it's digital devices or digital content, put it back into, the user's hands. And so really excited about this project. I think there's a lot that we're going to do. We're going to take a lot of that model that we used in Right to Repair to pass similar laws and to make a different, a similar impact. But, we're at the starting kind of days of this, right? And so one of the first steps was doing that research. And I think that's a huge part of what your wiki, the consumer wiki, is doing, right? So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and how that fits into what we're doing.
Well, one of the biggest issues is that a lot of the things that I talk about are stuck on my YouTube channel. So I'm speaking to the choir there. It's also not very Googleable. And above all, if somebody doesn't like me as a person, because my personality is somewhat of an acquired taste, this may result in somebody who would have otherwise been amenable to listening to this and thinking about these issues saying, screw that. But I want it to be so that if you're buying a product from a company that takes away your ability to say that you own what you bought and paid for, if you buy a baby monitor and they take away the features from it and say, now you have to subscribe to it, you should be able to tell in your web browser while you're on that product page, warning, revokes features post-sale, requires subscription in spite of original advertising. And you click on that, and then you can learn more. It's something that should be written in a neutral tone of voice. It should have all its citations. It should be something where a journalist could look at this and they have everything they need without having to listen to a Brooklyn Guido yell into a camera for 17 minutes to figure out what the hell the actual story is. I think this is going to be a big part of getting people more involved and also getting the community involved. Asking people to get involved doesn't always work, but when somebody has been screwed over, they've had their money taken, they've had their dignity taken from them, they will stay up until 4 in the morning writing a 6-page well-cited article on exactly how that company took away their rights of ownership. And so far, that's been working out pretty well. What are the things that you would be able to give people a little bit of insight on into the work that's going to be going into this over the next several years? What are we going to be doing? And also, what can the people watching do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few different things, right? We're in very early days of this. We're still, kind of developing our grand scheme to, rule at least our devices, if not the world. But we are going to, yes, be following a similar playbook to what we did with Right to Repair, doing research, getting media attention, winning the public, building coalitions, passing laws, doing all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot else that we have to do, right? When it comes to owning your devices, that might mean using a lot more open source software. And that's something that most people don't do. So, we've got ideas around how do we identify the best, opportunities to expand on open source software? How do we get, to get a little bit technical here, manufacturers of digital devices to adhere to the GPL, right, and provide back the code that they built on top of that original kernel. There's a lot of work that we can do to not only change the laws, but change the culture. And so I think that's what we're going to be focusing on, even going out to how do we get more future software developers, whether they're software engineering students or whatever it might be, to start thinking about, let's build open source programs, right? Let's not work within the confined walls that their, future employers might try to put on them. So, in the mission statement, it says we're fighting on the cultural front. That's going to be a part of this work. It's not going to be just lobbying. It's not going to be just wonkism, right? We want to be out there talking to people. And so as far as what people can do, I mean, for one, it's going to be staying tuned to Lewis's channel to, he's going to be providing updates and letting you know what's happening. And there's going to be opportunities for you to sign petitions, for you to show up and lobby, for you to testify in front of your local legislature. But as important are the stories of, times where something that you owned doesn't feel like you owned it. Whether that means that you got a device bricked, whether that means you got a subscription forced upon you after you bought something. We want to hear those stories. And so continue to keep sharing those, whether it's, reaching out to us. I'm sure we'll have some sort of way for people to report incidents, but also through that consumer wiki, writing it up, letting us know so that we can bring these horror stories of, ownership to light and really shine that light, because that's the best disinfectant. So one example of a way that people can get involved and start to help this project right now has to do with military right to repair, right? So there has been increasing interest in this, of the fact that when military technicians can't fix equipment out in the field, it affects readiness. It affects our military's ability to operate and to carry out missions and to do what they need to do, right? And so we've seen this with I believe the Secretary of the Army, right? Lewis, you made a video about how he was calling for a re-evaluation of contracts to make sure that right to repair is included. We're looking for stories, right? And so if you have examples, if you are a service member or were in the past and you have examples where you saw that manufacturer restrictions on repair of military equipment got in the way of readiness, we want to hear them. We want to make sure those are getting to decision makers in DC so that we can move this forward. Because when it comes to repair, when it comes to ownership, it's not just about our consumer devices. It's about military equipment. It's about farm equipment. It's about medical equipment. And so every push and every step we can take in the right direction moves the whole movement forward. And so yeah, if you've got those examples, send them to Lewis, and we'll make sure that they're getting to the people in power.
Yeah, ever since the Secretary of the Army came out with that, I've been combing through my email. I have somebody who's actually helping me comb through over 9,000 old emails that I'd like to double check. And we've been going through them to find every single mention of military right to repair. And there's one individual that actually wrote in about prosthetics and all this detailed information that I never knew about for military right to repair for prosthetics, which is obviously a really important part of it. So as many of those types of stories that we can get, the better, because we are now going to be working on this full time. And it can't just be something where I'm talking about ownership when it comes to the devices that I care about, when it comes to Disney Plus or Sony or Baby Monitor. We have to be talking about this in a very, very broad way. It has to be something that everybody understands and gets, which means talking about the issues that don't necessarily personally affect me. Because it's once I can get a senator to say, and cut me off in the middle of a conversation and go, yeah, they wanted $750 the Genius Bar to replace my fan. I don't need to have anything else to say anymore. The bill signs itself. In the past few weeks, I've had at least a dozen Australian news outlets reach out to me about that whole BWE situation. And one of the things that I want to get across here is that what he did is virtually no different than what happens at a number of different Fortune 500 companies. The only difference is that he doesn't have a PR person sitting between the customer and the company. Every single day he came out there and took away somebody's access to what they bought and paid for. He laughed at them. He called them stupid. He said that they thought that they were huffing lead fumes. And the difference between him and many of these companies is that at the company, that happens in the boardroom or in the CEO's office, whereas here, it happened to you. We're trying to bring awareness to this and the fact that it's not, in this moment where this is going to become so viral and be covered by all these news agencies, I think it's really important that people remember that this is not a story of one individual that's doing this. This is something that happens every single day. And one of the best things that all of you can do is make sure in your own personal lives, when you're speaking with your friends, your family, and your loved ones, when these things happen, have some sympathy, have some empathy, explain to them what we've been talking about on this channel for many years, and just try and plant a seed so that they understand these issues as well as you do, or are open to understanding them as well as you do someday, so that they're invested in it and they care. I accidentally hit stop recording for the ending of the video, so unfortunately, Kevin is not here. But I'm here to say, on behalf of Kevin and myself, that's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. We'll see you in the next video. Bye now.